This just in, the Miami Heat have suspended Jimmy Butler, but this time the suspension is going to last a little bit longer than the last one, which is crazy. The saga of Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat and how this thing is going to finish just continues. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Haize. More importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it for today. This just came down a little bit under 20 minutes ago from Shams Charania. Of course, the Miami Heat are suspending Jimmy Butler indefinitely. This came after Jimmy Butler walked out of shoot-around this morning after being told by the team that they were planning to not start him and that Haize would be starting moving forward for the team. Now, there's always a question of what Jimmy Butler would do, or what the Miami Heat would do with Jimmy Butler upon his return from this second suspension. And it seemed like maybe the Miami Heat were kind of open to allowing Jimmy Butler to play for him. They just were going to move on to a different direction with their starting lineup. And there's really, when you look at Jimmy Butler since the trade news and the initial suspension, the numbers haven't been great for Jimmy Butler. And, so there's a basketball reason that they can look to move forward. But other than that, like, just for the chemistry of their team, if you know that he's not part of your future, that you're going to be trying to look to move on from him at some point before this trade deadline, I mean, I can understand why the Miami Heat did not want to start him. But I think overall, just when it comes down to it, listen, over the last 5 games, he's averaged 11.4 points. He's averaged 4.6 assists, 3.2 rebounds. There's 37% shooting from the field, 47% overall. It just hasn't been great. Now, he's only averaging taking 8.5 field goal attempts per game over that stretch, which is way down for Jimmy Butler. But, again, he's starting to be phased out. It's kind of understandable in some shape, form for this team. And it's really crazy that this is where the saga has gone to. I mean, hey, it is what it is. If Jimmy Butler, if he walks out of a shoot around, you got to do something. And unfortunately, that Jimmy Butler keeps doing things that it gives this team and this franchise reason for recourse. And, and they have to walk a tight line, right? The NBA Players Association would be all over this if it wasn't for the antics of Jimmy Butler. Now, I'm not saying that it's necessarily all right by the organization either, but I'm not saying that they're completely wrong, just by the same as Jimmy Butler, right? And so they got to find a way and a path of what they're going to do and decide to do going forward. And I guess we'll see when it comes down to that one. Flockavelli, this is mad disrespectful, but Jimmy got to be more professional, at least for his teammates who ain't do nothing to warrant this. That is an amazing point. And that's really what this comes down to, is about the team overall. You have to have a standard. And this is really putting a kind of bad light onto what Heat culture was, right? Or whatever was really looked at being. And, it's unfortunate, but that's the way things go. That's the way that the cookie crumbles. Every dynasty you see fall, right? And not to say that the Miami had a dynasty. They're not. I use dynasty for the lack of a better term, right? And that's why this thing has all come crumbling down. And the Miami Heat are trying to grab on and hold on to something that they can find to reshape their franchise going forward. Reportedly, they're kind of prioritizing players that can help win now, even if it's younger pieces. And this is a Miami Heat team that has never really wanted to go a full rebuild. They wanted to do stuff slow over time, things like that. And they have a lot of young talent. Tyler Hero having a great season. Bam Adebayo, somebody they can build around. Khalil Ware, who's a young player. I love that they call him the Kryptonian as well. Love that nickname. That's one of the best, most underrated nicknames in basketball right now, is the Kryptonian for Khalil Ware. If you don't get why the Kryptonian is his nickname, we can't be friends. We can't be friends if you don't understand why his name spelled Khalil is not, and he's not, why he's called the Kryptonian. If you don't understand that, we will never be friends. But you got to look at those aspects of things as well. So the Miami Heat got what they need to figure out. Jimmy Butler has what he needs to figure out as well, and hopefully that this comes to a close sooner rather than later. I think it's best for everybody involved if this thing comes to a close soon. I just think that's where we're at right now. Flockavelli, maybe this forces Miami to accept less in a trade because now you're in a position to walk away with absolutely nothing. I mean, either that or And I think they're still taking the calculated risk of like, will he truly walk away for nothing, or will he at least pick up his player option with hopes that a sign and trade or something happen? Like, there's a lot of different scenarios in this, but overall, like, I don't think that it just comes to a conclusion by just kind of letting it go its own way. There's going to have to be some type of activity done in this, and hopefully that can be whatever is best for the player and for the franchise. You got to find your way in this, but this is just the next bit of nastiness come out of this situation, and it's really unfortunate when it comes down to it, because listen, at the end of the day, I mean, this situation is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be, man. And that's all we can really look at. CP in the building says, I tried to back Jimmy as long as I could, but he's not handling this the best. He would have been traded to a contender potentially. I mean, and that's the thing with Jimmy, right? When we heard the news that Jimmy's not done yet doing what he feels he needs to do, if it means getting out of Miami, we already knew that. Look at what happened in Philly. Look at what happened in Minnesota. Like, we all understand that Jimmy Butler can turn something into an absolute shit show if it comes down to it, and if it benefits him. And that's what this is really turning into, is an absolute shit show. It's really unfortunate, man. So did this mean they broke the news to him at shoot around? And are we talking about practice? Hella. I mean, they broke the news to him that he'd be benched, right? Like, I mean, okay, he's going to come off the bench, that they weren't going to start him. But, they didn't necessarily break the news to him that he was going to be suspended by this. Like this, we will gladly take him in Milwaukee. The problem with y'all in Milwaukee is that you're over the second tax apron. So you would almost need to get a third team involved, because you can only trade out. You can't trade multiple players in a deal. Like, that second tax apron is really, really affecting y'all. But a core of Dame, Giannis, and Jimmy, I mean, in the Eastern Conference, I mean, that could do some things, especially with how, the Milwaukee Bucks defense has gotten better, but it still has its limitations at times. So I can see why that could work out for y'all as well. But, kind of is what it is at this point. But we'll continue monitoring this saga that is Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. Does it come to a resolution sooner rather than later? We'll see. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below, whether you're watching this live or after the fact. Love you guys. Make sure you guys are following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. See you guys on the next one. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the